Hello. Hello, my friends. Welcome. Welcome to this day, this video. I'm really grateful to get to be here and to get to do this, to have this life and this voice and this spirit that genuinely wants to help others feel freer and more pleasure, less pain in their life. Just really grateful for this space and how we get to do that while we're here. Um, as much as the title and the image like makes it maybe look like there's some fancy plan to what I want to say today, I mostly just left that. That was Monday's idea, and I never came up with a different one. And I don't know that I'm going to talk about those things, but here we are, and we're just going to talk about whatever is most present at this time. And really what I want to know more than anything else lately, which I think is kind of cute, it's definitely new territory for me, is like, how are you? How are you doing? How is your world right now? How are how are you balancing in your world? Because well, because that's always important for one. Um, I've been fascinated by this question lately, like really wanting to ask people how they're doing. So I would love to hear in the chat if you care to share. Um, this year, the astrological energies that we have at play are like ridiculously intense. And we know it's exactly what it's supposed to be because it's happening. So that's good. Except this is definitely intense. It's like the volume knob got cranked up, and as as we've been like doing our inner work these last years, and as we've been working on our healing journey, it's like we've been doing the practices and working on centering ourselves and soothing ourselves and grounding our energy and managing the flow of that energy. We've been working on these things, and it's kind of like this is what we were practicing for. This is a level of intensity on the planet right now that we as like human carbon based creatures are we're not fully up to speed with it is kind of the issue, is that the frequency of the planet is moving faster and faster and faster as we have all of these different transit turning points unfold. And you know the highest good of the all is evolving and unfolding at rapid velocity. And there is basically like a greater consequence to staying in density because of the way the frequency of the planet is speeding up. So, if you're going 5 miles an hour in your car and you look away for a few seconds and you look back, it's probably fine. You've barely gone anywhere. But if you're going 100 miles an hour in your car and you look away for the same couple seconds, you covered a lot of ground in that time, and you could have accidentally caused a lot of damage to yourself, your car, other people. So, the same amount of deviating from our true nature can cause us a lot more turbulence now as a result of the frequency on the planet itself speeding up. And so, this by nature, by nature, nothing is good or bad. Everything is neutral, and basically, good and bad is a figment of our own imagination as we want to assign these things to different piles. It doesn't really exist like that. Like, the frequency of the planet has always been getting faster. Like, that's just always been what's happening. And what is going on right now that is different is that we are hitting a tipping point on the planet where there is like a large enough number of people practicing the things that we've been practicing and holding their vibrations consistently as best as we possibly can, given how crazy this year has been. And we are hitting a tipping point where the difference between remaining in your true nature, aligned with your inner being, connected to your own divinity, the difference between that and deviating from your true nature and entering density, going out into other people's business, trying to mind their business instead of our own business, that is going to cost us more and more and more as the frequency of the planet speeds up. And it has sped up a lot this year specifically. Like, it's like the speeding up of the speeding up is speeding up, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's like we're going faster in our car now, and the speed makes it that much more important to be really tuned in to our true nature. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about all the time, my whole life, basically. It's like, how do we live a life that feels good to us to live? Because, I mean, I've definitely lived a lot of life that felt pretty shitty and brought me to the brink of like, do I even want to be here anymore? And a couple times I tried to leave and it didn't work. And here I still am, so grateful to get to be here, to get to have this day in my life, this time in my life that I get to show up in this little box on the internet and connect with you. I am just so grateful for that. Jody's sharing a quote with us. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Whoa, I love that so much. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Just gonna let that sink in for a second. Thank you, Jody. I have never heard that before, but that is like the epitome of so many things. This conversation I was having with somebody the other day where we were talking about fears and the body's no response. So, like, when we're in body, when we're embodied, we can feel our body's signal of something being a yes or something being a no. So how do you tell the difference between your body saying no and you being afraid of the thing, and coming from the viewpoint of like, I really don't want to be held back by fear, but I also want to trust my intuition. When my body tells me no, I want to listen to that as best I can while not being held back by fear. So how do you do that? And it's basically this idea of the fears that are just fear. Most likely, it's basically the same thing as your body's no response. Like, if a situation is only provoking fear inside of you, don't go there. That's like the whole point of fear, is to like protect yourself. And if that's all it is, if that's your entire physical response is just fear, then I'd say that's pretty close to a no. And that's basically the same thing. But there are other times when, yes, it is provoking fear, but there's also at the same time, there's this excitement, there's this like curiosity, there's this like pull and this intrigue into the situation, but there's kind of like a little bit of fear, a little bit of nervousness. But like, notice at that point, this is just a little bit because there's this other thing to focus on. And now you really got something, because at that point, I think, yes, those are the kinds of fears to like really listen to your body, because I think in that moment, your body is what's giving you the excitement, and the excitement is the yes. That's what a yes feels like, is maybe not like full-blown excitement every time, but definitely positive emotion, positive bodily sensations. It feels like excitement or curiosity, or like you're headed in the right direction. and even then, when you really look closely at fear or like nervousness, for like a milder example, nervousness and excitement are basically this like two different sides of the same exact coin. So as you like right now, this morning was a perfect example. For about the 10 minutes before the live stream started, I I was like very nervous. And as I like really went into my body to try to see like why am I nervous? And I found what I think is more excitement was basically what it was. Like I was excited to get started and my energy was kind of amped up, so I like got up and walked around a little bit, and it wasn't really nerves like I was scared to do it. It was nerves like I'm ready to start and it's not time yet, like how it felt standing on like the starting line of a race or something like that. Um, yeah, so there's like different levels of fear. And when you get to those like higher levels, basically you're getting into excitement and passion and all kinds of things that are definitely risks worth taking, right? Like there's enough momentum, like positive momentum, if you're excited about it, if you're like looking forward to it, or you're like curious and feeling good, wondering what might happen when you get there, but you're also a little bit nervous, it's like, yeah, I mean, you can totally keep your attention and focus as best you can on the excitement part and just hear the fear as you go versus like if all that comes is fear, thank that fear and say no to whatever it is that's asking your time and attention, because sometimes that's the right answer. And that's not being held back by fear, I don't think, so much as like being guided by your emotional guidance system, which was how we thought it was going to work as we came in here. Um, yeah, uh, life is good, you know? As intense as it's been, that's what I'm witnessing more than anything is recognizing how I'm experiencing things that when I've experienced them in the past, it would have bowled me over to a point where I would have been lashing out at other people because I would have been so off balance. And it's like I experienced that and then I watch myself like get myself back on balance. And it's like, wow, wow, I know for sure I couldn't do that before. And that's a really cool thing to realize, like to get to witness your own progress in the face of like really challenging things. And how do you witness your progress unless you go through it again and you see how you're handling it this time? And I mean, that's kind of where I think a beginner's mindset or like a growth mindset comes in very handy, is in recognizing that progress is enough, that like really you're enough without progress to begin with, but any little incremental progress, any little incremental steps of like, a teensy bit better and a teensy bit better, like that is worth its weight in gold. Like that's really in the earth realm, that's as good as it ever gets anyway. So to be evolving like one little step at a time, like that's huge news. And to be doing that and to be able to look at yourself and appreciate that you're trying, that you're doing it, you've already come so far and you're still doing it. You're still taking what comes and trying to make yourself feel better and taking what comes and trying to, it's just balance. It's getting a little off balance and getting a little bit in balance and a little bit off balance and a little bit in balance. And we get better and better and better at balancing ourselves in the face of whatever comes. And isn't that what we want anyway? And that's like a real question. I would love for you guys to tell me, like, to have an easy time getting on balance no matter what comes. Um, to me, in my mind, I'm like linking this with this idea of like true security. That like true security is being able to right your ship no matter what wind comes and like blows it wherever. Like you just put it back on track and keep on going. That's okay. And that reminds me, okay, so this coming Tuesday, I am hosting what feels like a party. It's kind of a party depending on how you define party. We are going to get together on Zoom and practice the work of Byron Katie together as a group just for the fun of getting to practice the work. If you're not familiar, you can learn more at thework.com where she has all of her free resources. She also has a YouTube channel with tons of amazing videos. Um, I think if I was going to recommend one of her videos, if you've never seen any of them before, the first one I would have you watch is the the meat industry one. Maddie, maybe you can grab the link to that one. Um, yeah, it's about the meat industry, and in that video, they do what I think is like a miraculous job of taking the suffering that this woman was very currently experiencing as she steps up to like do the work with Byron Katie. And they together, through questioning her thoughts and beliefs, they turned that suffering, they alchemized it into a plan of like soul activated action. Like like action plan that actually has a chance of moving the needle in her desired direction. And she was like geared up and ready to like actually do the work and do the what she needs to do, and she understood that now versus just feeling so hopeless and powerless against the situation. So yeah, it was very, very good. But she has lots of different videos on lots of different subjects. You can basically do the work on anything that is causing you suffering in the world, like anything, any situation where you don't feel good, you're angry or you're frustrated or you're sad or you're hurt, whatever negative suffering type feeling that you're having, that's a candidate for us practicing the work. And so the session itself is on Zoom, so everybody can come and participate if they want. Um, and we'll all fill out the worksheet together when we get there. So if you don't know how to do that, that's no problem. I'm going to talk us through it and we'll all fill it out at the beginning. It only takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes to fill one out. And then we will call for some volunteers and we will have a few people practice their work out loud, and the group will get to hear. I feel like when we watch videos of like other people doing their work, like what she has on YouTube or like what we're going to see in this event, it's like no matter whose work it is, it's really all of our work, myself included. Um, like every single person that we come into contact with has a little bit of ourselves that they're bringing back to us. So getting to watch like the few specific volunteers, whoever they will be, um, do their work out loud for the benefit of the group, I'm so excited to get to do this. So yes, that is next Tuesday. I invite everyone who is able to make it to join us to be there for it live. And if you can't, that's really no problem at all because it will all be recorded and the recording will be on the YouTube channel so that you can watch that kind of at your leisure and maybe even come back to it if you want to fill out the worksheet again. So check that out if you're into it. And like I said, if you can't make it, the recording will be there. So yeah, that's super exciting. I have been having the best time doing the work. It is incredibly liberating. It is so powerful to put an end to suffering around one particular belief at a time. That's really all we can ever do. We can't change our beliefs. We have to like pick one and then work with it, just this one, until it's in a place where it helps us to feel like we're now back aligned with our true nature, aka when we think the thought, it feels good to us. It feels relaxing and free and joyful and right place, right time. That's what like our truth feels like. I feel like that's how I experience my truth. Um, and then when something is not my truth, it's like there's like a little spike that comes from my stomach that just says no. No. And when I listen to people talk, like when I listen to a video, like somebody sharing their perspective, or like this Byron Katie, work where it's somebody going back and forth with her, or even like in conversation when I'm talking to people, like when they're talking, I can hear my own decision on, do I believe the truth of what they're saying? What they offer is not guaranteed fact, it's only at best their truth. And as it comes into my system, I get to resonate with it or not. I get to have a yes or a no response in my body. And I've been thinking a lot about like how best to describe what a no feels like and what a yes feels like. Again, this is where I would love to hear from you guys. Like, as far as how do you experience a yes? What does a yes feel like? What does a no feel like when your body gives you those signals? Um, I think like my best way to understand a yes, and this is very, very helpful, is to me is a yes is like a wild horses type experience of, like, wild horses couldn't keep me from doing the thing. I'm so excited. I'm so passionate. And I'm so ready to like go forward and do the thing. And that's what a yes feels like. It's like when the idea comes or somebody asks me, the energy to want to do it comes with the idea. So as I get the idea, the energy, it's just like it just moves me. The whole thing is one package deal. Versus like with a no, I usually find myself in questioning mode rather than recognizing that this was a no. It's more like recognizing if this was a yes, I'd already be doing it, you know? And then kind of like letting go of like that idea. Like if it was going to move me to actually bring that idea to life, to bring it to fruition, then it would have. And if it's not, then it's definitely at least not the right time. Not that it's not a yes eventually, but I'm going to just get off the subject for right now and give myself a chance of receiving an idea that does bring the energy with it to be able to do whatever it is that I want to do. I hope it's not my reception on my internet that makes it choppy for you, Blue, but if it is, I apologize. I'm sure it is divinely intended to do some kind of cosmic protection on my behalf. That reminds me of that's one of Byron Katie's things too, is anytime she loses something, she says, like, she's instantly grateful and is like, oh, I've been spared. So like she loses a bag on an airplane, or like it doesn't come out at baggage claim, and she thinks, oh, thank goodness I've been spared. And you know somebody dies, oh, thank goodness I've been spared. Like she loses anything and she immediately thinks that she's been spared from, like, any, basically anytime she's receiving any amount of pain, she takes that with gratitude as the only reason that I would have to experience this pain is because it's helping me to avoid this pain. So I'm going to be so grateful for my little pain because it's keeping me from this one. And that's, I feel like, kind of a radical perspective on negative experiences, right? Because like that's what she's talking about. She's talking about like having life deal you a crappy hand, or like a problem, or you're the victim and it shouldn't have happened like that. Like, what if that spared you from something far worse? Like, is that possible to think? I mean, that's basically, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but as I'm telling this out loud, I am reminded that that is essentially how I did the big chunk of the healing towards my dad that like let me move back here, 5 years ago, where like I was so mad at him for being gone. He like worked on the road and was away for months and months at a time, and missed all kinds of things, like basically wasn't there. He was working, and I was so mad at him for so long through most of my 20s, um, because he wasn't there. And the realization that came was, if he had been there, like, you want to talk about pain, he should have been there. Like, him being there would have been a million times worse than him being gone. Him being gone and me being in that situation of him not there and her all by herself with four little kids, like, that situation was way easier than if he had been there. And realizing that in my late 20s set me free of a lot of things. And that's basically what she's saying about kind of life in general, is like any amount of pain and suffering that you are feeling, the way she puts it, God is not a masochist. Like, she doesn't believe that to be true. She believes that, like, the God of her understanding is love, is pure love. So the only reason that this universe would ever put us in pain is to spare us from a greater pain. Maybe. Right? We put a question mark at the end of everything, because that was the quote I wrote down from my listening this morning. The only true statement the mind can make is, I don't know. Because that's the work of Byron Katie, is like, is it true? Is it true? Can you be sure that it's true? And when you get into that, can you be sure it's true? Basically, no. Never can you be sure it's true. You think, it's raining outside. That's true. I can be sure it's true. Are you sure you're not dreaming right now? Are you sure that you're not a butterfly having a dream that you're a human and it's raining? Like, can you be sure? Do you know for certain that that's true? And basically, the teaching is to, like, not necessarily change our thoughts or change our beliefs or let go of certain thoughts and keep other, like, none of that matters. It's more like letting go of all thought, like kind of taking thought and putting it in its place as a tool and kind of a fun thing to keep ourselves entertained with sometimes. Um, but it's not the source of our truth, never was, never will be. Like, that's always going to come from in here inside of our heart or our gut, wherever we find our personal resonance with. Like, when we relax into something that resonates with us, when we're relaxing into a truth that we can feel in the core of our being, that's truth. Out of our head, we can only ever get thoughts. And thoughts may or may not be true. And almost nothing is absolutely true. So basically, our thoughts, like, all we can ever do with them is question them and use them to feel our way into what is personally true for us. And questioning our thoughts is a very, very interesting process, because, like, there are definitely people that I've run into in the world who say that they don't have self-talk, like they don't, there's nobody talking inside their head. And basically what that means is that they're, like, so inside of the one who's talking that they don't see it, like a fish in water. Like, water just is, it is and always has been. And that's kind of the same with, like, the talking in our brain and the pictures in our brain. Like, we were born doing this. We were born doing it. Everybody around us does it. Most people are in theirs believing what they're thinking. And so that's what's modeled for most of us. And so we grow up believing what we're thinking. And at some point, usually because the suffering is too hard to withstand, we are willing to make a change. We're willing to do something different. And that's usually as a response to, okay, enough pain. I'm ready for, I'll do something different if it means getting a different outcome. And that's a really powerful place to be at, because I personally think that, like, I've been talking a lot lately about, like, suffering and the choice component. involved in suffering where, like, let's just say, as kind of a base level of like where I'm coming from, pain in life is guaranteed. I personally believe that that's part of what we're guaranteed to experience here in the Earth School is pain, and maybe some good stuff too. So definitely pain. But suffering is not pain. Pain is not suffering. Pain may be guaranteed, suffering is not. Suffering is optional. And because suffering happens in the story that we make about the pain. And so if we can intervene in that story and we can look at what's happening from a different angle where the story we make about it feels good instead of like suffering, that is how humans exercise their power. That is your power, is to choose how you want to look at whatever situation you're sitting in right now. And that's where like a lot of like Byron Katie's book, for example, is called Loving What Is. And that's the premise, is like wherever you are, you can find your way to your true nature because it's inside of you. Like whatever you're living, especially if it's causing suffering, that's actually more helpful for helping you find your way to your true nature and to like let go of this suffering. Like in the way of integrity, the book by Martha Beck, she talked about one of her clients that she met like 30 years after this story she told her. But the woman was like 24, had like 6 kids, had dropped out of high school because she got pregnant at like 15. And she decided that she was like so done that she was going to go up to this cliff by her house and she was going to fall off of it so her family didn't know that she didn't want to live anymore. And she walked for most of the night to get up there and thought, before I do it, I'm just going to sit here and like watch the sunrise for a little bit. And as she sat there, she said, like, I was basically already dead. So I didn't care anymore what people thought of me. And if I didn't care what people thought of me, then I was free to see that it's not that I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to live how I was living before. I want to make different choices. I want to be different in my world. And that is very, very relatable, basically, to my story. And not those exact circumstances, but essentially the suffering got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. I can't live like this. And that's where, one of the biggest blessings I think a human can have is a super sensitive body. Um, like having a low pain tolerance or being super sensitive to pain just means that you're not going to be able to stay and withstand the structures of pain that exist in this world. Like if you have a high pain tolerance and you're in a painful situation, you'll stay way longer than me over here with my barely any pain tolerance. Settle. No. And because of my low pain tolerance, I don't stick around. I have to find a different way. I can't I can't participate in the status quo. I can technically, like, it's actually really interesting. I've been outside of like having a job for years. I mean, my last job I left in December of 2016. So what would that be? Almost 6 years ago was the last time I had a job. And I just started, it's only like a 12-month placement. So it's a temporary job, but it's a job. And it's very weird to be back inside the structure of another person's world. This is not my world. I'm entering their world. And that's weird. That's super weird after being my own boss basically for the last however many years, like running my own company, running my own projects. Like that was my world. And in my world, I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. There was like no expectations. And some of that was really hard to handle because I was so used to having external expectations on me that it was kind of like, what do I do with myself if nobody's asking me for things? But I figured it out. And now it's like almost kind of full circle. going back um, into like more of a work job type setting where I do get to work with other people and get to kind of feel some of those old dynamics that I haven't been around in 6 years, and to get to kind of, like I said earlier, to get to see myself in a situation that I've been in before many times, maybe, and to watch myself react in a new way that, like, I didn't have access to this reaction when I was in that situation last time, and now I do. And getting to witness that growth, it's like, again, for somebody who thought, like, I'm never having a job again, like, how would I know how far I've come if I didn't go back to the training ground where it was so miserable and go back to having a job and see, like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely like wearing somebody else's clothes. Like, these are not my this is not my outfit. Like, this is weird. Like being in their world as opposed to just my own, but I'm holding my own. And that feels really good. That's really satisfying to get to recognize. We also had, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome. Our conversation on Tuesday was incredible. It was so touching how the common threads ran through like everybody's experience. Like when one person would share, you just see like everybody else's, you're like got gallery view going on the Zoom and you just see like everybody else's heads are like, yep. You could just see like we all felt what each other were saying, and getting to hear their like other people's experience or like a slightly different view on the same thing, like a different angle. It was so like just literally heart filling. So thank you for any of you that were there. Um, if you're someone like us, like literally, that's one of the things we talked about, one of the common threads is that we're leaning towards wanting more connection, more conversation, more like heart to heart community, like where it's a safe space to bring your real self and say true things out loud, to celebrate your wins and speak your confusion to help get a different perspective. Like there's so many different beautiful things that come out of this space. And if that's something that you're looking for more in your world, I invite you to check out the Patreon. So that is the benefit of joining the Patreon is that you get access to the sacred circle that we have on the fourth Tuesday of every month. So, like this past Tuesday, August 23rd, was the fourth Tuesday of August. The next one, the fourth Tuesday of September, is September 27th, and we host the Zoom at 10 a.m. Is it 10 a.m.? I'm blanking on the time. Is it 10 or 11, Maddie? Can you tell me? Can you help me, Maddie, please? What time does it start? She's all over it. Always is. 10 a.m. Central Time. And at the time, the length varies. We just kind of flow with it as long as it's fun. We were on there for 2.5 hours this past Tuesday because we were having that much fun talking to each other. So one Zoom a month, we get together, have a little connection point. So if you're into that, if you're wanting to check that out, please do. The Patreon is a recurring monthly fee because we're doing the Zoom each month. And so whatever you pick as your subscription fee, it's set at a pay what feels good level. So we recommend $5 just because you kind of got to pick something, but it'll go as low as $1 a month and it'll go as high as you want. So if you want to be there, we want you to be there. I mean, like I said, like it's just a fun space where people get to come in and be their real self. And just one more opportunity in the month to get to talk to other real people who take off the mask and show us what's real, right? Like, how often in our worlds do we get to do that? And I'm gonna say what I hear in my head, which is not often enough. So authenticity is really the goal of this space, and we know that when you're being authentic, like that means the good, the bad, and the ugly get to come in. There's no judgment on what you bring with you into that space. We've had some really fun, lighthearted conversation. We've giggled about eyebrows and whatnot, eyebrow tricks, um, fun times. And then we've had some really deep conversations that I think, at least for me, like brought another level of healing to the surface. So it has been a really awesome space. This past Tuesday was our seventh one. So September will be our eighth one. So yeah, check that out if you would like. I personally have been really, really, really craving more conversation with people. Like as fun as it is to sit here and look only at myself and see you guys on the chat, um, it's so much more fun when I get to see you and hear you and get to actually go back and forth. So it's really interesting because I feel like, well, my energy tends to be kind of all over the place anyway, but I definitely go in spurts and cycles. Like when I very first started offering stuff, like kind of putting myself out there spiritually, I started by hosting groups. Like I kind of went for, like, jumped into the deep end of the pool. That was my first experience was on Meetup, and I would just kind of throw out a topic like, hey, let's talk about natal charts, or let's talk about midheavens, or like whatever. And then people would come to those and I would get to meet them, and we got to chat and whatever else. And it got to where, and this was just the season of my life that I was in, because it wasn't just the events felt too heavy to keep doing them. They definitely did. But also at the same time, I was like shutting off from the world as a whole. I went into like a 3.5 month hibernation. And it was during that that I stopped doing the group events. And as I came out of it, I was just more into videos. It was so much easier to get to like record a video whenever I felt like it. Like that level of freedom felt really good as my next stage. And I made a lot of cool videos that I really enjoyed. Um, Enjoyed prepping for them and making them, and like including the North Node and Taurus video, which was kind of like a very very startling experience after publishing videos and getting like, ooh, this one got 12 views. I broke the 10 barrier. Like, it's going good. And then this one, like, I think it's sitting at like 30,000 views now, 31,000 or something. And that's basically where like most of you came from, was like that one video. Like, that's how you found this channel. And so the making videos stage was definitely part of the plan. And in order to make the videos, I definitely needed to pull back from the group events. But now that you're here, I'm like, okay, enough with the videos. I want to meet you guys. I want to like sit on a Zoom with you, and I actually want to talk back and forth. Um, Here's a good question from the chat. Applausify. I like your name. Are Cancerians by nature or by birth chart more insecure and love needing puppies? Because it just does not seem to get better. I I want to understand more about your question. Um, like, so first, I think the part where I want to start is like, what do you mean by Cancerians? Like, are you talking about people with their sun in Cancer? Because as I practice, like, we all have Cancer energy. So, like, I think on some level, we're all insecure because we all have Cancer energy. And you're right, that's definitely the shadow, kind of the shadow of all the signs are insecure. But I can see what you mean about Cancer. And like the love puppies, again, I think that's all of us. It's like a how much in denial or not are you? Um, and because it just doesn't seem to get better, should it? Should it get better? That would be my other question. Is like, what does that mean? Better, better than what? And yeah, because like Cancer, I have a love affair with Cancer energy. Um, Basically because it's kind of like the fountainhead for the well of our healing. So without Cancer energy, no healing ever happens, spiritual, emotional, otherwise. I would say even physical, because that's just a reflection of our emotional. But that's, yeah, like Cancer is where we feel our feelings, and that exists inside of all of us. And like when you listen to Stephen Forrest's book, he's an evolutionary astrologer, and he has a book called The Book of Water, where he talks about the three water signs: Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. He talks about we cannot heal what we cannot feel. And the purpose of Cancer energy is that you have access to your feelings to let you know what healing do you still need to do. So when our feelings are bubbling up in a emotional kind of way, when we're presenting with a lot of emotional energy, that is basically healing that is coming to the surface saying, okay, it's time, work on me, work on me. And so when we're in touch with our Cancer energy, when we're flowing with it productively, we let those emotions come out and we ask them, as the messengers that emotions are, what are you here to tell me? What is beneath this feeling? Like if I'm sad, why am I sad? If I'm sad because I'm feeling disconnected from my loved ones, then reach out and connect with them. Or if you're angry or somebody's angry at you, or like you're angry because somebody hurt you, okay, what is that anger here to tell us, and what message is it trying to get our attention with? Those emotions that are coming, that that's kind of the purpose of Cancer energy, is just our raw emotional energy. None of that is by accident. Every bit of it is divinely on time. So getting better is a matter of healing what's coming up. So like if there is something that is like a pattern of pain and suffering going on inside the person's life, there's something that needs healed. There's a wound that is being kind of like have a light shined on it by the emotions that are coming up and out. So flowing them, learning to journal them, learning to, or like taking them to therapy, depending on how intense they are. But ultimately, like it's up to all of us to work with all 12 of the zodiac archetypes inside of ourselves. And with Cancer energy, that very much includes managing our own emotions and working with what is that emotional energy telling me moment to moment, inside of myself. And typically, I think cancers in the world can get a little bit of a bad rap, because when I say cancers, I do mean solar cancers. So, like people who were born while the sun was in Cancer. Um, the sun represents the core of our personality. It's like literally how the sun is the center of our universe. The sun in our natal chart is the center of your personality. And so when the center of your personality is in Cancer, your personality lives in the center of the fountainhead of the emotions that are bringing the healing into our world. And so you live there. You're just closer to it. There's no getting away from it, basically. And then you go around other people who maybe they don't have any placements in Cancer. So, like, they do still technically possess Cancer energy, but maybe it's not as loud in their world because they don't have any planets or points there. So they're better. They're better at turning the volume down on that emotional energy and maybe even pretending like it's not happening and letting it run under the surface. And a Cancer person, whether you have the sun in Cancer or just multiple things in Cancer, that's just really not an option. You're just not going to turn it off and be healthy at the same time. And really, for all of us, like, we kind of need to let them all out, some more than others, though. So it's like when your emotional energy is really intense and then you go around somebody who's used to leaving theirs kind of like under the rug and in the basement and kind of locked away, it can be pretty agitating. I know. where they don't want to face their feelings. And when you take your feelings into their space, you're provoking their feelings too. And they don't want to look at that, AKA, they don't want to look at you. And it's not personal at all. If somebody thinks you're too emotional, that says more about them and what they're able to cope with than what they're saying about you personally. Like, too emotional. Again, what does that mean? Like, is there a right amount of emotions? Is there a right amount of emotional expression? Not in my world. I don't know. Maybe in your world. But that's my little soapbox moment. And you could have asked me about any of the 12 zodiacs, and it'd basically be the same speech, subbing in and out like the specifics of the zodiac sign. Because again, I do think that it does us a big favor when we learn to find all 12 of the zodiac archetypes within ourselves. I think it reduces othering, where we are like looking at other people and giving them qualities that are bad and pretending that we don't possess those qualities. And I have no idea if that's really what you meant by your question. I'm kind of riffing here, but it's like, yeah, when we project our discomfort out into the world onto a certain zodiac archetype, like to say that, Virgos annoy the hell out of me, or Capricorns are whatever, or Geminis or whatever. Like when you have one that just you really don't like, there are no others. There's only you, and there's only like finding things inside of yourself that hopefully are acceptable to you. And Cancer, again, is one that I think, especially in today's culture, can easily get a bad rap because it is an extremely feminine energy. It is extremely receptive. It is, by definition and by nature, out of control. And in our dominantly masculine, patriarchal society, those qualities are highly frowned upon. Not right or wrong, right? I'm not saying the qualities are bad or good because I don't think that exists. And it's not good or bad that the patriarchy defines them as good or bad. That's all just neutral. And all of it is information that inside of ourselves, we get to work with our own thoughts and beliefs about emotions. Like if Cancer, for example, is one that you have a hard time seeing inside of yourself, it would be some questions around like emotional awareness. Like how often during the day do you notice your mood changing? How often do you cry? How often do you laugh? These are all coming from the same places. The emotions, like how Brene Brown says, like you cannot selectively numb. So if you don't want to feel the bad things, you're cutting off the good things at the same time. So if you refuse to cry, probably you're putting a cramp in your laughter as well. And I laugh all the time, if that tells you anything about how often I cry. So, yeah. Thank you so much for your question. That was a fun little tangent. Anything else? What do you guys got? What do you bring with you today? What's on your mind? How's life? How are you? How's your heart? What are your emotions like lately? Do you want to tell me these things? Because you sure can, if you want to. This is basically all I want to talk about all day, every day. How's your heart? How's your emotions? How you doing? Yeah, that's mostly all I want to talk about, for real. Is like your energy, what's going on in there. Personally, uh, I found out recently, I guess it was like a couple months ago, about draconic charts. Um, it's very much similar to your natal chart, but you have to pick, like, it's not a natal chart, it's a draconic chart. And the calculation is just slightly different on how they determine, like, where everything is placed. And the goal is that it's essentially saying like the natal chart is kind of the energy that you're carrying on a day to day. Like that's the way that your personality is wired, like more your conscious self is wired. And underneath that is the Draconic chart. And the Draconic chart is more like a whole chart for your soul's intention, a whole chart showing what was the reason that your soul chose this. And whoa, it was so cool. Um, it made so much sense, like several things, several pieces. And I'm like not even close to done unpacking it. Obviously, I only found it a couple months ago, but it was so cool to see how, like, I have a whole stellium of things in Gemini and then a couple things in Sagittarius that are opposite my Gemini stuff. And on my Draconic chart, all of that Gem Sag moves into Cancer and Capricorn. And like all of my Gemini stellium moves into Cancer. And that felt like coming home inside myself, like in a new way to understand, like, why am I so sensitive? Why am I so sensitive? Like, why? And I think, like, I really do think that my sensitivity, like, I can't, like, I cannot tolerate emotional pain. I just can't. It hurts me. And so, because I can't, I am very insistent and dedicated to finding ways to transmute emotional pain. And kind of like I said about Cancer energy, it's like you can't get away from it. So, in my Draconic chart, I have my Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Chiron all in Cancer. So, like, yeah, there's no getting away from it, like, no matter what. And that, yes, maybe feels like I'm saying my life is emotionally painful, and it is, but that's also prompted me to do a ton of my own like emotional healing. And then the more that I've worked myself from suffering into peace, into like having an inner world that feels good to live in, it's like all I want to do is help other people figure out how to get their own inner world nice to live in, how to like to live inside themselves, how to enjoy their own company, how to like themselves, let alone love yourself. Like that's essentially all I want to do all day, every day. It's so amazing. I love it. Mm. Uta, I'm going to come back to yours. Andrea, like I had something pop into my head. So Andrea says, numbing is a big issue for me. I'd love to find skills to help me get through stress without the crutch of substances. Um, oh, fine. Yes. Yes. I gotcha. So I shouldn't use substances to cope with stress. Is it true? Can you be sure that it's true? I shouldn't use substances to cope with stress. And yeah, I totally get you, but I don't think I don't think it's a bad thing to use whatever you need to cope with stress. And I'm a big believer in when you like the part of you that is reaching for the substance, the part of you that wants to numb is the part of you that is holding the discomfort. And that is an innocence. That is an innocent part of you that is trying to fix the discomfort that they feel. And judging your use of the substance is like attacking that innocence for being wrong, that they shouldn't do what they're doing. And this is very much like my own internal, like ongoing conversation around mostly alcohol, but just like distraction and numbing in general. Like what I'm feeling is more true in my world is like rather than trying to like take away the numbing and take away the substance, the crutch, like instead of forcing yourself to walk without a crutch, I think it's like so much more like kind and compassionate to ourselves to like focus on the healing that is causing us to need the crutch. And like if you could walk without a crutch, you would be. Like no one wants to use the crutch, and if you are using it, there's no shame in that. And we can't even know that it's wrong. Like that's just not even possible, I don't think. And that when you don't need it, it'll kind of naturally fall off. Like a scab. Like the scab forms all by itself because it has to close in the wound. And when the wound is healed, the scab automatically falls off because the new skin has pushed it off. So there's a process that's like the purpose of the substance or the purpose of the numbing. I'm calling mine a substance because mine is mostly beer. The purpose of the numbing, I don't think it's even to like force us to heal because we want to quit using the crutch. It's like our attitude towards the crutch and towards the numbing is an opportunity to further question our own thoughts and beliefs and where we might be rejecting ourselves as not good enough yet when we actually are. That, like, just because you have like a cap to the amount of stress you can handle before you're like, okay, that's enough. That's enough. I gotta cut it off right there and move on with my life, right? Like, I mean, we keep ourselves in balance. And when we've hit the end of what we're able to tolerate, and then we apply something to help us continue in a balanced state, I think there's like kind of like a going more to the root of kind of raising the roof and the bar, raising the roof, raise the bar on like what we're able to tolerate. So yeah, and again, I'm very much giving all of that to myself because I think I spend a lot of energy judging myself for drinking. And would it be better if I didn't drink? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I know when I don't and when I haven't, like for chunks of time, there are benefits. And then I also know that there are benefits to drinking when I feel like drinking. And so it's like, what if what if the crutch isn't even about the healing? It's more about the self-acceptance, I think. Like I think my drinking isn't a problem. My predefined rules of right and wrong that I'm using to judge myself in this situation is maybe more the culprit of my discomfort than the fact that I'm numbing my stress. I think in my own personal situation. Yeah. Like I do think that we are human and there's only so much we can take. So at a certain point, I think there's honestly mercy in numbing. It feels very masochistic to me to say numbing is wrong because you're saying that, like, nope, you should suffer. Full out, you should suffer. And you shouldn't get even a little bit of reprieve. And there's no taking the edge off of it for you. And, like, nope, just full force. Like, that's what you get. You have to do that. I don't think so. I don't know. That doesn't feel true in my system. And, like Elizabeth Gilbert pointed out in one of her interviews, it was like, you know, when I'm talking to my higher self or my God or whatever you want to call it, they never say you have to do this. Like you have to follow this way or you have to do it this way. Like we pick those kinds of rules up from other people. And I know for me, my drinking is especially sensitive because I watched my dad be like a daily drinker and I have judgments about him and his drinking and the ways that it negatively impacted my life, which are all stories that, like who would I be without those stories? A happier person and a less judgmental person at myself. Because I know that like being mad at him for his drinking makes me feel like a giant hypocrite. And I try not to face that. But again, it's like you can fix that one of two ways. You can stop drinking, which makes you not a hypocrite, or you can forgive him. You can forgive the judgments that were wrong in the first place to say that you shouldn't have been doing this. No, I shouldn't have been telling you what to do. I shouldn't have been looking at you feeling like you're doing it wrong because you weren't doing exactly what I wanted you to do in that moment. He's drinking instead of playing with me. And so I think he's doing it wrong. But how selfish is that? He's not doing it wrong. He's coping with his life the best way he knows how. And I'm getting the short end of the stick, but that's life. And me choosing to make myself a victim to his drinking, it definitely is a bit of a mind fuck now when I'm like a drinker myself and I like it and I can see why you would reach for that and I can see why it's an enjoyable experience. And so, yeah, I think when we judge ourselves like for the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and like I want to change this or that about myself, like it's definitely good, I think, to start with questioning like, do we know it's true that you should be different? Like, does it feel like your inner truth calling you, like a greater level of relaxation to be able to, give that thing up? Does it feel like more freedom? Does it feel like higher levels of alignment and ease and flow and like right place, right time? Like the energy is just present to do the thing and it's so effortless. If that's what it feels like, I mean, I've definitely gave up drinking for chunks of time when it felt like that. And it was amazing because every single time in that clear-minded space that opened, I would receive something and it would be beautiful inspiration and I would take it and run with it. And then I would pretty much always start drinking again and giving myself a hard time, telling myself I shouldn't. And I haven't until your question, Andrea, thank you so much. I haven't until right now, like used the work on this belief of I shouldn't drink. Do I know that's true? No, I don't know that. And what she even said, she's like, how am I supposed to die on time if I don't take in all these toxins? If I don't like expose myself to that, how am I supposed to die on time? She's freaking awesome. She's so cool. Definitely one of my favorite role models. Um, it's been a rough, so Uta says, it's been a rough couple days. Are the planets putting us through more challenges? And actually, I have to admit, I haven't even looked at the transits in a hot second. So I am gonna, well, that's gonna take way too long. Um, what are we coming up to here? The Virgo new moon is tomorrow. That's one. Yeah, Virgo new moon is tomorrow. Um, I think just in general, the the energy of this year, and this is kind of like the North Node in Taurus transit, which is like 18 months long. That goes all the way through July of next year. But both of those, like 2022 general astrology and the North Node in Taurus transit, all of that is leading to this self trust, this inner authority, this divine autonomy, this reclamation of your power to stand your sovereign ground. And To reunite with our power is to question the beliefs that we are holding that are preventing us from already being in our power. Like this was one of my favorite Byron Katie videos too. Maddie, maybe you can grab this one too. It's the one about adultery, weight, and sex. And this woman is just so lovely. She's so adorable. Um, and I forgot what I was going to say. There's something, let me think. No, it's gone. Yeah, I don't know. What was that? If anybody knows what I was saying, maybe you could tell me. Is that a thing? Yeah, that was like one of the best ones. That video. Um, mm, Gosh, my mind is like a total blank. But I learned this week that when I'm inspired with a blank mind, that that's actually for the highest good of the all. That source energy has access to me fully, yes, but source energy also has access to every single individual fully, also. And sometimes, like when my words flow easily and my thoughts flow easily, and there's stuff there to say and to offer, I'm leaning into trusting that whatever I'm inspired to say is exactly what I'm meant to say in that moment. And this week, I clicked in the belief a little bit more of trusting that when I'm inspired with a blank mind, that that's me getting out of the way of source energy delivering the highest good. The highest good doesn't include me saying what I was going to say. So I'm not going to say it. Easy peasy. Just let that go and let go of the expectation on myself that I'm trying to hit some like predefined target, some like set place that I need to land by providing like the perfect answer. And that's just not my job. Like I I had a moment this week where I was like kind of beating up on myself because I didn't say anything. My mind went blank and I was like writing to my higher self, my God, about it. And basically I said like, help me to like think more clearly or something like that, like so that I have like love and compassion to offer, something like that, like help me do better. And my God was like, what makes you so sure that what went down wasn't exactly what was meant to go down? Why do you think that situation was supposed to be different than it was? It was perfect, exactly as it was. Who are you to say that it wasn't? Cool, thanks. Let myself off the hook with that too. And that actually gave Dolly and I like this really awesome conversation this morning about like, we don't always have to respond to people. Like, thinking that it's our job to respond when people ask us for things, I think is a belief that can cause a lot of suffering because we can feel very on the hook for, well, they asked, so I have to. No, you don't. No, you don't. But especially when they're standing right in front of you and they're offering something and they're saying something to you, and you have this identity. This is the real issue, the culprit hiding behind the whole thing. The real issue was I had this identity in my mind of like, I want to be a loving person. I want to create a sense of the person feeling seen and heard. And that's who I am and that's who I'm gonna like live up to in this moment. And then all I had was a blank mind and I had no words for offering a response. And that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes, sometimes we plant the seed, sometimes we harvest the fruit, and sometimes we get out of the way. Sometimes the no response is really the best response that could possibly happen. And even if I don't understand like why that is, what makes me think I need to understand? Why can't I go with the flow if that's what I had access to in the moment and I did my best? And like, is that good enough? Do I believe that my best is good enough? I didn't until this week. Like, I definitely worked that out on a whole nother level to decide that when I try my best, that's good enough. And if I fumble it a little bit, did you try your best? Great, then it was perfect. It was good enough. You're always good enough when you're trying your best. And even, gosh, I'm tempted to say even when you're not trying your best, you're still doing such a good job. We always are. Like that was one of the things that I think when I lost my train of thought and I couldn't respond like earlier this week, that was part of what like really happened was they offered something that was so thought provoking that like my mind like went down this huge rabbit trail and then I realized I wasn't paying attention and I snapped back and that was about the time that it was over and I was like, oh shit. So I was doing my best, but one of the pieces um, was again about this idea of like good events and bad events and like did you plant a good seed or did you plant a bad seed? And I like really went into this like little meditation of like, is that true? Are there good seeds and bad seeds? Can you know that that's true? I can't. It stresses me out too to think that there are good events and bad events, that there are good seeds and bad seeds. Like that's a stressful thought. It's a worrisome thought. Like, ooh, I don't want to get the bad ones. Like, oh, I only want the good ones. And yeah, like what's the opposite of that? Like all good seeds are bad and all bad seeds are good. That's an opposite. All the seeds are good. All the seeds are bad. That's another opposite. Like I yeah. So that was part of it was like I personally believe that like no matter what you're doing in this moment, like no matter what kind of shape your life is in, you are doing so good. You are doing like exactly what you intended to be doing right this minute. Nothing is off schedule. Nothing is out of whack. Everything is right on time. Everything is working out for you so perfectly. These are my beliefs, try them on if you like. Uta, that is such good stuff. I had just written something before I came on this morning about having over 1,000 teachers who I have been trying to follow, who are not all in agreement with each other. And the only thing I truly want is to hear and follow my own inner teacher. Again, me too. Me too. It's way too complicated to think about finding the right teacher out in the world who's going to tell me like the right way to live my life. Like that is a complicated, stressful thought to me. It is so much easier to me to think about I have my answers inside of myself. Like I can feel in my body when my body says yes or my body says no. I can feel in my body when my body relaxes into something. And that's how I understand the inner teacher as opposed to when my body clenches at something, and that is me heading away from my inner teacher. So I personally think that Uta, you probably already hear your inner teacher sometimes. Um, I wonder if you resonate with that. I mean, I I definitely think it's tricky to think of hearing your inner teacher, because it may or may not come to you as like auditory words. And for me, it's not. I mean, I don't hear my inner teacher, I feel my inner teacher. So like basically my inner teacher is telling me yes or no. My inner teacher, when I look at something, it's either saying hotter, like yes, go in that way, hotter, 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 that's the right way, or colder, 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 like you're going in the wrong way. Either it's more relaxing and it feels more like freedom, or it feels more like a burden, it feels like more difficulty, it feels like more stress, it feels like less power, it feels like less hope. That is like basically the sensation of walking away from where your inner teacher is trying to get your attention to go. And when you put your attention where your inner teacher is trying to get your attention to go, it feels like relaxation. It feels like all of a sudden, like your shoulders come down and like you can breathe easier. It feels like nothing needs to be different than it is. That's like the level of ease that we're talking about. Like, it's not that what you need to do is easy. It's easy because you don't need to do anything, because everything as it is exactly perfect. Nothing needs to be different. And that, yeah, actually, okay. So I didn't know if I was going to share about this, but I just got the hit and we're doing it. So this is the yes of, drop my water bottle. The idea came, and without even thinking about it, I grab my notebook and I flip it open and we're doing it. So there's no question. It's definitely a yes. So, The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. Oh, highly recommend this book. She is using the concept of the inner teacher in that book. And so I'm not sure, Uta, if you've read it. I know we talked about it a little bit, but I can't remember if you said you brought it or what. But that is essentially what that book is about, is how to find your inner teacher, how to hook up with your own inner knowing of what is right and what is wrong for you. That does not solve anybody else's right or wrong. It doesn't tell you a single thing about what anybody else should be doing or choosing, but it definitely guides you when you can feel your inner teacher. And so I just finished this book, or I have like 30 minutes of it left on Audible. And so as she gets into the last section, there are 4 sections in the book. The first one is the dark wood of error, the dark wood of error. Number 2 is inferno. Number 3 is purgatory. And number 4 is paradise. And so it's this journey. And if you've ever heard of like Dante's Inferno or the Divine Comedy, she's using the Divine Comedy and the stages that Dante outlines of like going through hell and coming out the other side. She uses that and interprets it. And every chapter has exercises, again, to point you back into like finding your inner teacher. And so, kind of coming full circle on everything, I've been wanting more conversation in my world. I've been craving more like face to face connection with people. And I've also, like, over these last couple weeks, given up planning and preparation, like as a lifestyle. I'll now do it when it's necessary, like as in for my job or something like that, where my job is to make a plan and teach the plan to other people. But in my day-to-day life, like I was way over planning, way overthinking, way over prepping. And then it would happen where I would do all of this prep, and then we would get to like the live stream, for example, we'd get to Friday morning and I would have this like powerful sensation of like, I want to talk about this. And then all my planning would go out the window anyway, because I'm meeting the energy where it is. And yeah, so I've given up all that planning time. And so I was spending a lot of energy on so much planning and preparation. And now I'm not spending that energy on those things anymore. And what will I spend the energy on? I'm going to spend it hosting more conversations. So this is a free 4-part workshop that we're going to do, where we're going to meet on the first Saturday of the month. October 1st, and then the first Saturday of November, December, and January. And we're going to take these 4 sections of the Way of Integrity and do the exercises and have a conversation around those those exercises and those sensations, like that part of kind of turning inward and connecting with our inner teacher. And then the next time we meet, we'll have read the book, that section of the book, like stage 2 or whatever. And then we'll come together and we'll do the work together, the exercises, and have a conversation. All the way to you end up in paradise. And paradise is where I was this morning listening to the Paradise chapter. And that basically, like, oh, these are some quotes out of the Paradise chapter. Once you're free, all you want is to help set others free. The function of freedom is to free the others. So, like, basically, when you get to paradise, paradise is living a life of you are well taken care of, so well taken care of that you can help the others to suffer less as well. So that's the goal, is to, let go of all of our limiting beliefs. That's essentially what the process, the Way of Integrity is doing. It's a process of questioning what we're thinking and believing, because that's what I was going to say when I lost my train of thought earlier. So the woman, the adultery, sex, and weight video, she was really getting it. And at the end, she's like kind of sitting there, and you can tell she's feeling so much lighter than she was. And she asked Katie, okay, so I get everything we've talked about, but how do I get all the pieces and like put myself back together? Like, it was such an honest question, such a genuine, like, you could feel, I feel like I've been there. How do I put myself back together? Katie looked right at her and said, sweetheart, without your story, you are together. Without your story, you are together. So, like, self-trust, inner authority, true security, being aligned with our power, being able to hear our inner teacher, which is basically, I think, to another way to say that is to be able to hear our intuition, which is another name, I think, for inner teacher. All of that is already happening. And without the story of why it's not here yet, or why you're wrong still, or why you're good enough or not good enough yet, like, that's the part, that's the thorn that's making the whole process not work, is believing that it's not working. Like, it sounds so cliche and so simple. And I think, I wouldn't have been able to hear this, and so I don't blame you if you can't either. But to have well-being is to believe that you're well, and that's it. So to like have contentment is to believe that you're content. To have peace is to believe that nothing is wrong. And until, like, part of, okay, so this is kind of jumping a little bit, but part of like the early part of my self-awareness and my spiritual journey, very much credit Abraham Hicks for this, as far as a huge part of being able to find our way to our inner teacher is caring more than life itself, because it is life itself, how you feel. And if you don't feel good, doing something about it. So, like, distracting yourself with something fun, or getting off the subject of whatever it is that feels bad and getting onto a different subject. Um, Whatever you can do to cut short the pain and suffering that you're feeling. And I feel like I needed that step first because I didn't realize how much I was spinning my tires thinking thoughts that were the very root of my own suffering. Like thinking that nobody likes me and thinking that that's why I'm isolated and that's why I'm lonely. Heartbreaking realization that I don't like me. And that's a very different thing than they don't like me. And, those kinds of beliefs where I was definitely blaming it on other people. And when I really got into Abraham, I saw how, like, the world out there is not causing my suffering. When I think about the world out there, when I pay attention to it, that seems to be causing my suffering. So finding our power inside of what we choose to pay attention to, what we choose to give our attention to. And when we catch ourselves suffering, being able to say, I don't want this, I want something different. But I think where I was before was like I was basically suffering all the time. So it was kind of like a fish in water. Like I didn't even know that that was like optional, that like there was even something else. And most of the people around me had some degree of what I had going on for them too. So like I basically didn't know any happy people. There aren't very many of them in the world when you really stop and think about it. There are very few souls who are truly at peace in this world. So it makes sense that like we never had that modeled for us. We never saw what that looked like. We never saw like what are the string of choices that you can make that will lead you to inner peace. We had people tell us what might lead us to success or even happiness. Like if you get a good job and a nice house and, have a family, like then you'll be happy. And maybe, like for some people, not for other people, and that's okay. Um, but yeah, it's incredible how powerful we really are when we're tired of suffering. And the other piece that I found at the same time that I found Abraham was the other half of this coin. It's like, again, if you are suffering all the time, I mean I can't say for sure, but like the only way that that's really possible is if you truly believe that that's what you deserve, that that is the life that you deserve. And because of that belief that suffering is all there is, that belief makes it impossible to see past suffering and to see your way out of suffering because suffering is all there is. And yeah, makes me so grateful for like all the 1 degree turns, like every day, thought by thought, like not waiting for a full blown meltdown to happen to realize that I'm uncomfortable with this. I When I pay attention to this, it doesn't make me feel good. When I pay attention to this, when I'm thinking about this, like it's not good. So let me get off the subject of it. Like at this point, I'm extremely sensitive to getting off the subject of things that don't feel good. Like I just I try my best to don't engage in stuff that doesn't feel good. And it doesn't have to be really uncomfortable for me to get to say no. It can be just this much uncomfortable because if I'm this much uncomfortable, that means it's sparing me from this much pain, right? Like, oh, I've been spared. Oh, I move in and out of those states. Which states are those, Uta? What states do you move in and out of? Um, and even like moving in and out of states, like that's kind of normal, Like I think that's one of the reasons I asked during Cancer when I was talking about the Cancer energy is like how often during the day do you notice your mood shifting? Like how often do you notice you go from happy and lighthearted to stressed out, back to happy, then to frustrated, then back to okay again, and then a little bit more into frustrated, and then full blown anger, and then kind of mildly stressed out, and now the day's over. Like, like your mood is almost like constantly changing, and it's just a matter of like, is it changing like this? Because that's what mine does, and it makes it really easy to keep up with how your mood is changing because the swings are huge. Um, or is it changing like this? Like, is it so quiet and so under the surface? And if it is, that that kind of sucks, because like, we're going to need to turn the volume up on that. We're going to need to pay more attention to it more of the time, because until you can hear how your mood changes throughout the course of your day, that's the only way that you can like listen for how do your thoughts feel as you're thinking them. When I put my attention on this, it instantly makes me feel bad, so I'm going to back away. And like, if you can't spot how your mood is up and down and fluctuating, it's going to be difficult to see like which of the thoughts that you're thinking are hurting you and which of the thoughts that you're thinking are in alignment with your inner teacher. So turning the volume knob up on our emotions is not a piece of advice you hear a whole lot out in the world. And I personally think like it's going to be difficult to find any level of real fulfillment without getting your emotional flow to be like a regular part of not even daily life, but like moment to moment guidance of, is it yes or no? Every time I think anything, like we make so many decisions every single day. Like, even just I'm sitting here typing an email and I feel like, ooh, I kind of need to go pee. That moment right there is a decision of, am I going to listen to my body and go take care of myself, or am I going to sit here and make myself keep working? Same thing. Like right now, my stomach is hungry. It's growling at me, has been, and it's like growling louder and louder to like get my attention. So every day we make so many decisions, and if you're making decisions without listening for your personal yes or no, then that's how you end up in the dark wood of air, kind of like what Uta said, with like, there's thousands of teachers out there that'll tell you how they did it and how it works for them. But following blindly on somebody else's recipe is never going to get you to like your own sense of personal fulfillment. It really gets us lost in the dark wood of air, where all the things they taught us to do to be successful, like none of it works. Why won't it work? Um, so yeah, if anybody is interested in going through the way of integrity with us, like as a group, we're going to start October 1st, and then the other dates that you can mark on your calendar, we'll have more info out soon. October 1st, November 5th, December 3rd, and January 7th. Those are the first Saturdays of those 4 months. And we're going to go through one chunk of the book at a time and do the exercises together and see if we can't all get better acquainted with our inner teacher and how to follow that inner teacher out of believing the things that are causing our suffering. That's okay, Uta. I definitely resonate with that. Uta says, it feels like the shifts are pretty extreme, and I do pay attention to the thoughts, but sometimes they escape me, and often I wake up in a less than optimum state. Totally. Like, and I don't know if you mean wake up like in the morning, or like wake up inside the fact that you're spinning inside something that doesn't feel good. Either way, how awesome that you wake up. How awesome that you realize that sometimes I think thoughts that feel really good, and sometimes I think thoughts that don't feel really good, and how awesome that you can feel the difference, and how awesome that you can practice guiding yourself in that way. Like, even I don't think it's possible to just constantly feel good. I think it is absolutely unrealistic in my world to think that you're like just never gonna feel pain or negative emotion. Like, you have to. If our emotions are our guidance system and there was only ever left turns, you wouldn't go anywhere. You would just stay, and you would make a left turn and a left turn and a left turn and a left turn. That's positive emotion. That's like all positive emotion all day long. You just sit there. You don't go anywhere. But when you can make left turns and right turns, and you can go straight and make a right turn and a left turn, like, you can really wind up having an awesome adventure. So the negative emotions aren't going away. And when you wake up, when you find yourself inside a moment where my thoughts have escaped me, and now I'm off in a place where the thinking I'm doing doesn't feel good, in that moment, has something gone wrong? Or did something go right? Your guidance system is working. Like, you were thinking the thoughts that don't feel good, and then your state is less than optimum. Sounds like your guidance system is working. You're moving away from your inner teacher with those thoughts, and so you feel worse and worse and worse. Sounds like your guidance system is working. Nothing is going wrong. And in that moment of waking up inside of painful thoughts, that's a place to practice self-compassion and giving yourself mercy for the old momentum that is absolutely going to have to play itself out. Like, the patterns of thoughts that we think for days and days and days and years and years and years, those don't just go away. Every time you give a thought energy, it gets bigger and more powerful. So when you think the same thought, the same storyline for years on end, or even just a few weeks, like, it takes hold and it's got a life of its own. And all it's waiting for is for you to get a little bit distracted, and then here it comes. And it's like, ooh, my turn again. So the best thing that can happen is that you wake up recognizing that what I'm thinking right now does not feel good. My body is tense. My mind is anxious. I feel tight. This doesn't feel good. I feel powerless. I feel helpless. I'm now noticing that I must be thinking something that is not helping me. So, what do you do? What do you do to get off the subject? What are the practices of recentering? Because again, I'm very moved by this idea that true security is being really good at putting yourself back on balance. It's not about being able to say, I don't get knocked down. That's bullshit. Anybody telling you that they don't have hard things in their lives, they are full of shit. And they're lying to themselves, if not to you. So it's not about eliminating hard things from our lives, or upsetting things from our lives, or negative emotion, or whatever. It's like, how kindly and lovingly and gently can you take yourself and set yourself back on balance? That is truly something. And when you can do that for yourself, you can kind of meet everybody wherever they are, because when you don't need yourself to feel a certain way, you also don't need other people to feel a certain way. And that's been something that I've noticed, like, over the course of my journey with Abraham, and like feeling for my thoughts, has been like, I was a very negative person. I was like a very pessimistic, I called myself a realist, but I was definitely a pessimist. Um, yeah, just very negative, and like, nobody was ever good enough. I was never good enough, just not good. And as I as I started to find my way into good feeling thought, it was like my old patterns of negativity, not only would they like resurrect themselves, but anytime I came into contact with, like in a conversation or like on a video, with somebody like with a negative pattern of thought, it would instantly provoke mine and feel absolutely terrible, to the point where, like, for a little while, I had to just like, nope, back away. I can't tolerate negativity in somebody else, not because I need them to be different, but because it brings me right back into my own. I'm not strong enough to hold myself in a positive thought pattern when I'm listening to somebody else tell me negative things. That was like years of the journey, was like, you just got to stay out of it altogether. I can't listen to you be negative because then I'll be negative and I'm not willing. So that means I'm not willing to listen to you. My sincerest apologies, but that's my truth. And now I find like this is part of what I'm finding as far as like witnessing myself going back into similar situations from my past, but holding my own in new ways is like, especially with this whole is it true concept of like, nothing is absolutely true. Like, I love that. I mean, that may be overwhelming or scary to some people, but to me, it feels like total freedom. Like, you're done trying to figure out the right answer because there is no right answer. There's no absolute truth. It's just the best you can do in this moment. So that feels like relief to me. And now when I hear someone, anyone, who I wouldn't even call it they're being negative, that was definitely my own fear of the state in myself. But like now I can totally see they're suffering. And they're not suffering because of me ever. They're suffering because of what they're thinking and believing in this moment. And that doesn't evoke any negativity in me whatsoever. It evokes compassion. It wants, I want to ask them what they're thinking. I want to ask, what are you seeing in your brain? And do you know for certain that that's true? Can I help wake them up out of the thoughts that are causing them their suffering? And so that to me is like another sign of getting to see how far I've come with like not having to protect myself against other people's negative thoughts. Like that's used to be how I operated because once I found positivity, it felt so sweet that I just like was not willing to give it back. So I just stayed off of any subject that didn't feel good for years, and it's only been within the last few months that I feel like I'm coming back around to be able to be around people who would typically rub me the wrong way. And I mean, there's just like this total compassion that's like, one, they don't even have to stop suffering if they don't want to. It's not for me to tell you you can't suffer. I'm not going to rob you of that. If that's your whole identity, I wouldn't dream of it. It would be incredibly unstabilizing, destabilizing to take your suffering away from you. So, yeah, it's none of my business. It's none of my business, like how everybody around me is feeling. And that has felt like a really big step forward where the way they're feeling doesn't have to impact how I'm feeling. And that feels like the way of integrity. What they're saying is, or what Martha Beck is like basically putting out there is like, on one hand, you're going through the inferno and you're burning away all of these cultural beliefs that really aren't yours. They were just taught to you as the right way to do whatever your culture expected of you. And so while you go through the inferno, all of that is burned away. Simultaneously, the teacher is getting stronger and stronger and stronger inside of you. And that is kind of like happening simultaneously is like the cultural expectations burn away and the inner knowing, like that inner guidance, the inner teacher that knows what's right or wrong for you in any moment. Once you have access to that, again, it's like I think for a long time I was able to like feel my thoughts like positive or negative and know which ones cause suffering, but all I knew how to do was get off the subject of the ones that cause suffering. And that was really helpful for me as like a chapter of my journey. But I can see where like I can't heal people and operate like that because if you're suffering, like if you need healing, chances are you're probably suffering to some extent. And yeah, like just getting off the subject or just like avoiding the people who are in pain, like that obviously like doesn't really work. Um, and so to have this tool in my toolbox now, access to this option of seeing, like basically to have access to not take it personally. When someone isn't feeling good in my presence, that is not at me. It's not about me at all. And I can save us both a lot of time by helping to skip straight to what the only thing that ever causes our suffering, which is what you're thinking and believing in this moment. So that feels really good. And it feels like a whole weight coming off of my shoulders of like, it's not my job to have anybody's answer. It's only ever my job to like feel inside of myself like what is authentically true for me in this moment. And that is always good enough. That is always the best I can do, is to feel what's real and true for me in this moment. And like I said, sometimes that's to be quiet. Sometimes that is to just step out of the way and don't provide the support that culture tells you is nice. You know, like that's one example of like culture says like smile at people and like, well, I guess really depending on where you're from. I definitely was raised in the Midwest and our culture is very friendly, very supportive of the other person, kind of no matter what's going on. You're like, yeah, okay, yeah, and like you're tracking. And that's like Dolly and I was talking about this morning of like sometimes like at the grocery store, like she doesn't respond. Like people that are like really wrapped up in a web of their own hurt and their own, like there's just so much going on around them that is dissatisfactory. And like sometimes like she's like, I mean, there's just nothing to say. There's just no words for that situation. And so sometimes there's just no response. There's just eye contact and saying, kind of like saying with your eyes, like, I see you. I see you in there. Like words aren't going to cut through what you just gave me, but I do see you, you know? And yeah, like when it comes to like breaking with that cultural expectation of being nice, I find that to be very uncomfortable. But that tells me that's like part of my healing path, so that's good. I think that's precisely what I've been doing because I really dislike negative emotions, so I keep my world tiny. And honestly, I think that like is logical. Like as far as if you want to feel good, then only focus on things that feel good. Like I think that's very much like step number one. And like basically how she describes like in the Way of Integrity by the Paradise chapter, paradise, it's so God, it's so good. So delicious. Paradise is actually walking as an illuminated being through the dark wood of error and helping other people to wake up out of their suffering. That's paradise. You go back to the dark wood of error and you're not lost this time. You're like lighting the way for other people. But until, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I found Abraham and started listening like every day over 6 years ago. And it's only in the last couple months where I feel like I can sit with a quote unquote like negative person and hold my own, like hold my vibration where I feel aligned and I feel relaxed and I feel at ease inside of my world. I feel secure inside of my world where somebody else's anxiety or insecurity is less and less and less and less still pushing me off of balance. Like my security is stable enough to stand up to like the winds of somebody else's beliefs. Like they can be telling me what they believe to be true and how they're so scared about it and how they're worried about this and this person's not doing what they're supposed to be doing and all the things. And inside of all of that like storm coming around me, I feel almost always, like I said, like as they're talking, I can just hear inside myself, like, does that resonate as true? No. Okay, well, let go of that. Does that resonate as true? Partly. This part is true. Let go of the rest of that. This part is, and so like that process is running all the time. So like at that point, what I'm seeing is like the only negative one is us, basically. Like when we have made our safety and security and love dominant inside of ourselves, like when acceptance is dominant inside of ourselves, someone else like suffering or not accepting their moment doesn't change our reality, because we're not being pulled off center because we're strong enough on our center. It took me years of living in a tiny world and being very isolated and mostly turning my focus and my attention inwards into my journal. I sent a picture of my journals the other day to a couple people where I moved them recently, and so I wanted to like put them in order. And it's like a whole shelf of journals that's like just books and like thousands of pages that are full of like gratitude lists and listing positive aspects and finding the silver linings of things and working and working and working and practicing and practicing and practicing to think thoughts and believe my thoughts that felt good. Like that shit takes time. And so, wherever you are in the process, like whether you're in the very beginning stages where you're brand new to the idea that some thoughts hurt you and other thoughts don't, like if that's brand new information, like you're right on time. And if you're already along the way and you understand that some thoughts hurt you and some thoughts don't, and you're in the practice of keeping yourself in the territory that feels good when you focus on it, look how far you are along that path. And like you're already doing it, you're so far along your journey. And even if you're not all the way to the end where other people's negativity doesn't knock you off balance, like you're still so much farther ahead than you were. You're still like awake and so much more aware than you were. Like, how long did we spend like spinning our tires in the mud before we recognized, like, oh, okay. Like, if I point myself on purpose towards fun and joy and positivity, those will be the dominant themes of my life. The dominant themes of my life reflect the dominant themes of my thoughts. My life is a reflection of my thoughts. Like, there was a time in my life where that idea was brand new to me. I was coming from a place of feeling like the dissatisfaction that I had for my life was everybody else's fault. And I honestly think that that is the belief that is only just now coming to like a healed fruition. It has taken me 6 years to be able to sit with somebody else who is hurting and to not also hurt. Like, to see their pain and to see the things that they think and believe and that they're suffering over, and to not automatically take that on as mine. Like, that feels like a huge chunk of growth. One that, again, I don't even think it's possible to go from zero all the way to there. It's like 1 degree turns over the course of thousands of days that led to being stronger and stronger and stronger every day in my core stability, in my inner security. Like, that's part of, I think, where insecurity comes from in general, is that like when we're born we're secure, and then the world treats us a certain way and we learn if the world is a safe place or not. And if you learned when you were little that your needs didn't get met, aka like the world is not a safe place, or worse yet, you were hurt instead of getting your needs met, again, that was kind of a conclusion that even in like your baby brain, like you can draw a conclusion like this world is not safe, this world is scary. And from there, it's like, yeah, no wonder, no wonder it takes 6 years to unravel a pattern of insecurity when I spent 30 years building it in the first place, 28, whatever. Of like practicing this, the world is not safe and he should be different and they should be different and he shouldn't have said that to me and she should be like, that's who I was for almost 3 decades. So, and that was like, that's how my role models were. It wasn't even just me being crazy and coming out of nowhere. It was like I grew up and became the adults that I spent time around when I was a kid. And that's who I was in my early adulthood, was basically them. And that led me to a point of suffering that I could not bear. And rock bottom type moment where I found Abraham, and they taught me that if a thought doesn't feel good when you think it, then get off the subject. I'm like, whoa, what? But I thought if you got a problem or if you have like an issue or whatever, don't you have to solve it? No, there's no bottom to that. Like, there's no solving negativity. It doesn't work like that. Like, so yeah, it was quite a journey to get here, and never did I aim to be here. I just wanted to feel a little bit better than I already felt. And when I very first found Abraham, like that very first day, I felt really freaking awful. Just rotten. Not wanting to continue living the life that I had. And I was open to either getting a different life, like making different choices, or being done because this is not workable any longer. And so Abraham found me that day. And that was a little over 6 years ago. And like, it's hard to even imagine that I used to be that other person. Like, that feels like a whole different life, feels like a whole different version of me. Like, definitely caterpillar to butterfly style transformation, where like the creature I once was no longer exists. And the creature I now am, I could have never imagined. I could have never like envisioned this creature. Like, honestly, if anything, I think a creature like me would have really annoyed the person I was 6 years ago, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, yeah, I think that there's like absolutely nothing wrong with making your world as tiny as you possibly can to support only keeping the things that feel good when you think of them, and then filling your world back up and making your world bigger and bigger and bigger by adding more things that feel good when you focus on them. So it's like, yeah, I don't call that friend as much anymore. That doesn't mean your world has to stay teeny tiny. You could make a different friend that is more aligned with where you are now. And like, now your world got a little bigger and you're not completely isolated. It's like when we think we have to like get the people who are already in our life to be different so that like then we can be around positive people. Like, if they would be positive, then I could be around positive people. It's like, we just let that go and find some positive people. They're out there, they're everywhere. As far as I can tell, like, now that I like myself, now that I feel good, again, you find them everywhere. Basically, everyone is capable of being happy for at least one little sliver of time. And I genuinely tend to run into people when they're having like a really great day. They're like, they got something to celebrate. They're like, got this good news they just are coming off of, or whatever. It's like, that's when I get to interact with people. And when they're not feeling like that, like, that's just usually not when I interact with them a whole lot, or unless they're like my close circle, in which case, like, we practice unconditional love together with each other. And there is a safe space where we can bring anything and everything that our human can conjure, and our souls will provide unconditional love onto whatever the human has brought forward. So those spaces are very, very precious to me, where the resistance and the confusion and all of that can come in. Because when other people aren't allowed to be negative, kind of, you're not allowed to be negative, and it really puts a big cramp on the whole healing journey to say that like you're not allowed to be in pain, you're not allowed to be angry, you're not allowed to like be frustrated with something in your world. Like, that's going to slow down your healing journey, you know? So I don't think it's necessarily like a make your world small and leave it that way. That if you want to, you sure can. But I do think that as you purify the toxins out of your world, that is to say, remove the thoughts and beliefs that feel like they're hurting you when you focus on them, as you clear space, like as I let go of all this energy that I was spending on preparation and planning and, being ready and like good enough for all my things, it's like I'm not doing that. And so now what am I going to spend that energy on? let me host another space where people can come and do healing work on themselves and learn tools that can help them find their inner teacher and carry that with them for the rest of their lives. So I think it is a process of your world can be as small as you want it to be. And if you want it to be small, there is no shame whatsoever in that. But to be stuck inside a small world, I would question if that's true. Because I think either you want to be there or it's time to, face some fears. It sounds like there's some excitement in there for using that as the oomph that you need to face some fears and put yourself out there and make the new friends, make the friends with the people who are more aligned with where you are now, that feel fun and lighthearted and relaxing to talk to. They feel safe to interact with. Like, find those people. They're definitely out there. And if you want, and if you resonate with me as one of these people, I have lots of community spaces because that is like one of my all time favorite things at this point. So I mentioned the sacred circles that we do on the fourth Tuesday of every month. That's through the Patreon. I have my meetup group where I host free events. They are completely free, they are open to the public. We had a guided meditation this past weekend, and somebody's sister in law forwarded them the invitation and they showed up. So, like, we got to meet all kinds of new friends last weekend. It was incredible. So, there's that that's completely free. And then also, it'll be through the meetup group where I put the information for the Way of Integrity, the 4-part workshop series where we're going to go through that book together and get more acquainted with our inner teachers. So, yeah, I personally love the conversations that I get to have with like-hearted others. It is one of my all-time favorite things to get to do on this planet as a human, is to get to talk to other people who feel like they are on a very similar frequency to me. That is like one of the funnest things you can do, I think. So I like to host a lot of these spaces. And if you want to come and play with us, you want to come and be in one of these spaces, I highly encourage you to check it out. Any of them, whatever feels like it's resonating. There's the work of Byron Katie event that we're going to do next Tuesday. And then, yeah, as soon as more information is available, we'll have it out there on the meetup group and the Patreon. So, yeah, if you want to come and join us and make your world a little bigger, fill your world back in with some stuff that feels aligned with your soul, yeah, come hang out with us. I would absolutely love that. I love at the guided meditation, that was the best part, was that like every single person was new. Everybody was a new friend. It was just like 6 new people out of nowhere. I was like, oh, it was so cool. So yeah, if that's you, if you've been like tempted thinking about poking your head into an event, maybe it's time. Come play with us. Okay. Okay, well, I think that's good for today. I think I'm going to wrap this up and move along with maybe going and getting myself some food. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for energetically hanging out with me. I can feel you guys here too. Uh, I genuinely love to get to do this, and I love that I've gotten to connect with so many souls through my YouTube channel. I am so grateful for this platform and this opportunity to get to use my voice and this technology to connect with you guys. So thank you for being here. Thank you for this universe where we have all of these yummy opportunities. And until next time, you take such good care of yourselves. And so will I. Okay. Okay, bye.